This is Kenny Tan. Welcome to Real Estate License in 14 Weeks. This is episode 32 of Starting from Zero. We continue with chapter 9. If you like my video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell for further notification, and share this video with your friends. What are the different types of listings? The first type of listing is called the exclusive right to sell. On an exclusive right to sell, first question is who is entitled? The agent is entitled to be paid a commission if the following conditions exist. So in the case of exclusive right to sell, it doesn't matter who finds the buyer. It could be the listing agent who finds the buyer, or it could be the seller who finds the buyer, or it could be somebody else, anybody else that finds a buyer. An exclusive right to sell listing is one of the highest level of exclusivity. In other words, whether the seller finds the buyer, someone else finds the buyer, agent finds the buyer, the listing agent is the only person that is entitled to receive commission from this type of listing. There are two other things I would like to mention about the exclusive right to sell. For an exclusive right to sell, because it is an exclusive listing, the law requires all exclusive listings to have definite termination date. And then lastly, for an exclusive right to sell, there's usually something called safety clause. What is a safety clause and what is the purpose of safety clause? I'll give you a scenario. Let's say a listing agent signs a listing with the seller for 4 months. At the end of the 4th month, a couple of days before the listing expires, a buyer shows up. And the buyer expressed an interest in placing an offer on the property. However, the buyer did not submit an offer until after the listing expires. Ordinarily, once the listing expires, the listing agent is no longer entitled to any commission. So the purpose of the safety clause is to give the listing agent an opportunity to recover commission from the seller even after the listing period has expired and the buyer submits an offer. In that case, as long as the buyer saw the property within the listing period. So let's say there is a safety clause for 45 days and a buyer shows up at the property before the listing expires but did not submit an offer until after the listing period has expired. But the buyer did so within the safety period of 45 days. Now, if the buyer submits the offer within a safety period of 45 days, the safety period is the period after the listing has expired that sort of gave the listing broker a grace period to earn a commission, so to speak. So the buyer submits an offer within the safety period, and the offer must be accepted within the safety period by the seller. Now, if that happens, it doesn't matter that the close of escrow is after the 45-day safety period, as long as the buyer's offer is accepted within the 45-day period, and as long as the buyer saw the property within the original listing period, the original listing agent is still entitled to recover a commission from the seller. However, there is a requirement, it's a minor requirement. At the end of the listing period, the listing broker is required to submit a list of all the buyers who could be a buyer that might submit an offer during the 45-day period. Any buyers that has seen the property during the listing period must be on the list in order for the safety clause, the safety period to apply. Next is exclusive agency. Whatever that is required in exclusive right to sell, such as the definite termination date and the safety clause, are also applicable in the case of exclusive agency. The only difference between exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell is that in a case of exclusive agency, if the seller finds the buyer, then the agency is out of luck. there's no right to recover commission against the seller. So that's the only difference. Everything else is the same between exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. The next type of listing is what we call open listing. An open listing is a non-exclusive listing. In the case of an open listing, usually there is no termination date. Well, the reason why there is no termination date is because none is needed. In an open listing situation, one seller may hire several different agents to work for him. There is no exclusivity. The next important thing about an open listing is what we call a procuring cost for the sale. So we need to know what procuring costs mean. The best way to illustrate what a procuring cost means is to give you an example. Let's say both agent A and agent B have exclusive listing with the seller. Agent A was approached by a buyer who wanted to see this home. So agent A took this buyer to go see the home. After the buyer saw the home, the buyer told agent A he loves the home, but the only problem he has is that he needs to get a loan. So the buyer asked agent A if agent A was willing to help the buyer get a loan. Agent A said, well, I apologize. I can't help you with the loan. You have to figure that out yourself. So obviously the buyer was disappointed. He needed to get a loan in order to buy this house. So the same buyer also found out that agent B is also a listing agent for the same property. Remember, you can have multiple agents on open listing. So the same buyer found agent B, and then same thing, the buyer told agent B that he's already seen the house, but the only thing is that he needed to get a loan. So the buyer asked agent B, could agent help him get a loan? So the agent B was very happy that this buyer found him, and he told the buyer, not a problem, I will find a loan officer and get you the loan. So ultimately, the buyer's problem was solved by agent B, and agent B opened escrow with the seller, and then agent B and the buyer closed escrow. Well, in this case, who is the procuring cause? Is it agent A or agent B? Because only the procuring agent can recover commission. The answer is B. The reason why the answer is B, because procuring cost means whichever agent is the deciding factor in the buyer making the decision to buy the home is the one who is the procuring cost. So between A and B, B is the procuring cost and not A. Next type of listing is what we call the net listing. Net listing means the agent's commission is not determined or not fixed. The agent's commission is based on the excess amount of money above the listing price. Let's say, for example, the listing price is $1 million. An agent found a buyer who is willing to pay $1.1 million on the property. Well, in that case, agent's commission is $100,000, because agent's commission on a net listing is the net amount of money in excess of the listing price. That's what a net listing is. So if agent finds a buyer who's only willing to pay $1 million, there is no net, so the commission is zero. Okay. Now, the net listing is perfectly legitimate. That means it's perfectly legal in California. There are certain conditions that must be met. In order for an agent to sign a net listing with a seller, the agent must make full disclosure about the market price for the property, for example. Let's say, for example, the market price is $1.2 million. The seller is desperate to get the property sold. So the seller suggested to the agent that I really need to get my property sold, even if I'm selling it at a discount. So would you take my listing? Agent said, yeah, I'll take your listing on a net listing. So I know the property value is 1.2, but if you give me a net listing for $1 million, I'll take the listing and I'll put it in the market and I get it sold as quickly as possible. And the seller agreed. However, in order for it to be a legitimate listing, The agent needs to give full disclosure. The agent needs to advise the seller that the market value for the property is $1.2 million, for example. And then the agent needs to advise the seller that whatever excess money that he's able to get in terms of the listing price that is above the agreed listing price will be his commission. Everything must be all spelled out in writing with full disclosure. Then a net listing is legal. The next type of listing is called exclusive authorization to acquire real property. Well, now you see the word listing simply means authorization to represent, to sell, or to buy. An exclusive authorization to acquire real property is an exclusive representation agreement that the agent enter into with a buyer, not with a seller, but with a buyer. Okay, so as you can see, you can actually get an exclusive listing with the buyer. Next, multiple listing service, otherwise known as an MLS. For some of you who were not in real estate before, you probably heard about MLS from your previous agent. MLS is a place where all the brokers in a particular region advertise their listings for sale. It is a service that is provided to brokers who are members of the MLS. One important exam question concerning MLS has to do with commission split. On an MLS listing, it's usually calling for the commission split that the listing agent is willing to give the buyer's agent in case the buyer's agent brings in a buyer. So let's say if a listing agent signs a listing with a seller for a 5% commission. Now, if the agent only wants to split 50% of that 5% commission, what number should the agent enter into the MLS? Is it 5% or 2.5% or 0? It is a multiple choice question. So in this case, if the agents want to split half, the correct answer will be 2.5% will be the number that the agent want to input in the listing. A salesperson may take a listing in the name of the broker. Well, actually, as a matter of fact, a salesperson must take the listing in the name of the broker. And the salesperson can sign the listing agreement, but the listing belongs to the broker, not the salesperson. So in other words, if the salesperson leaves the broker, that listing is still the broker's. The salesperson can't take the listing with him or her to the next broker. This is the end of episode 32. See you next time.